A very famous woman whose identity I will never reveal and only ever refer to her using our secret nickname, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher.
Wow. Y'all look good, bro.
Hey everyone, in a segment that instantly cemented itself in the annals of late-night evisceration, Stephen Colbert, the razor-witted host of The Late Show, turned his satirical cannon squarely on Meghan Markle this week, dissecting her latest foray into lifestyle content with a precision that left audiences both roaring with laughter and wincing at the undeniable truth bombs being dropped. The target was Markle's newly launched, and almost instantly mocked, cooking show, a venture Colbert framed not as a genuine culinary effort, but as a performative, tone-deaf spectacle of curated domesticity, engineered in a Montecito mansion far removed from the realities of actual home cooking. Please do not forget to subscribe to the channel, thank you. With the timing of a seasoned comic and the analytical eye of a cultural critic, Colbert didn't just mock the show, he dismantled the entire fragile premise of Markle's post-royal rebrand, exposing it as a hollow vanity project built on a foundation of privilege, contradiction, and a glaring lack of self-awareness. Colbert opened his monologue with the kind of faux sincere admiration that is his signature weapon. "What an inspiration," he began, his eyes wide with exaggerated wonder. "In a time of global economic uncertainty, a former actress and duchess has bravely decided to show us common folk how to..." Checks notes. "Reheat pre-made sauce and call it a family recipe." The audience erupted as Colbert launched into a play-by-play of the show's most cringe-worthy moments, highlighting the stark dissonance between its purported homely charm and its obscenely luxurious backdrop. We see Meghan in her $14 million kitchen, a kitchen so large it has its own zip code, gently stirring a pot while presumably a team of personal chefs waits just off camera, ready to swap it out for something actually edible, he quipped. "This isn't a cooking show, it's a hostage situation where the viewers are being forced to watch a performance of competence." The core of Colbert's critique, however, went far deeper than the jokes about undercooked poultry or overpriced artisanal olive oil. He zeroed in on the fundamental absurdity of Meghan Markle, a woman whose life is famously managed by staff, positioning herself as an authority on the rustic, hands-on intimacy of home cooking. Her idea of from scratch is probably telling someone else to scratch it for her, he deadpanned. Colbert brilliantly juxtaposed clips of Markle talking about the therapeutic simplicity of cooking with headlines about the couple's extensive household employees, including a personal chef. "She's selling us a fantasy of self-reliance while living a reality of full-service dependency. It's like a billionaire giving a seminar on budgeting." But the monologue's most devastating blow was its examination of the show's timing and context. Colbert connected this culinary endeavor to the Sussex's broader pattern of commercial missteps and credibility issues. The collapsed Spotify deal, the lukewarm reception to their Netflix docuseries, the perceived retreat from serious humanitarian work. "When the world didn't crown you the next Oprah, you panic and decide to become the next Rachel Ray," he stated, framing the cooking show as a desperate, cynical pivot. It's a strategic retreat from the high-stakes game of global influence into the safer, softer world of content creation. But even there, the inauthenticity is glaring. Colbert argued that the public's rejection isn't about disliking Meghan personally, but about an innate rejection of fraud. People can smell a performance. They know when someone is connecting and when someone is condescending. And drizzling truffle oil on a pre-cooked rotisserie chicken you didn't buy, cook, or clean up after isn't connecting. It's a parody of connection. Colbert also took aim at the show's awkward attempts to weave in themes of empowerment and mindfulness, themes that have become central to the Sussex brand. "Nothing says female empowerment like using your royal title to sell us $50 jars of jam," he scoffed. He played a clip of Markle discussing how cooking helps her feel grounded, and then cut to a paparazzi photo of her exiting a private jet. Yes, nothing keeps you humble and grounded like a quick 45-minute flight on a fossil fuel guzzling private plane to source organic heirloom tomatoes that cost more than my suit. In true Colbert fashion, the segment was more than just a comedy routine. It was a sharp cultural critique packaged as entertainment. He was speaking to a growing cultural exhaustion with influencer culture and elite hypocrisy. A sense that the gap between the preached values and the lived reality of celebrities has become a chasm too wide to ignore. By focusing Focusing on something as universally understood as cooking, Colbert found the perfect metaphor to expose a larger truth. Meghan Markle's brand is built on a paradox she cannot resolve. She wants the acclaim that comes with relatability without sacrificing any of the privileges that make her utterly unrelatable. She wants to be a queen of the common touch while living like a monarch in exile. The lasting impact of Colbert's takedown is that it moves the conversation from the gossip columns to the mainstream. It's no longer just a debate among royal watchers. It's a topic on late-night TV, discussed by a host with a Pulitzer Prize and a massive platform. He didn't just make people laugh at Meghan Markle, he articulated a coherent argument for why her latest endeavor feels so insulting to so many. In doing so, he delivered a verdict that may be far more damaging than any negative review, the verdict of irrelevance. By framing her show as a laughable delusion, he risked making her not an object of anger or admiration, but of pity and mockery, a fate far worse for anyone whose currency is their brand. Stephen Colbert didn't just roast a bad cooking show, he may have just cooked Meghan Markle's latest rebrand for good.
Call each other M and H. What could it be? A mystery for the ages. Now, we all have our theories, of course. Here's mine. I assumed it was for the obvious reason. M is the 13th letter of the...
It was meant to be another evening of light political jabs and celebrity quips on The Late Show, but what unfolded was something far more consequential. A meticulously executed, nationally televised demolition of Meghan Markle's meticulously constructed public image. Stephen Colbert, armed with a teleprompter and that signature blend of folksy charm and Ivy League intellect, did not merely tell jokes about the Duchess of Sussex. He performed an act of cultural autopsy. With the precision of a satirical surgeon, he sliced through the layers of curated vulnerability, performative activism, and aristocratic aspiration that define Meghan's brand, exposing a core so hollow that the laughter in the Ed Sullivan Theater felt less like amusement and more like collective vindication. This was not a roast, it was a reckoning, a signal that the American liberal establishment, once Meghan's perceived safe harbor, has begun to reject the very contradictions it once cautiously embraced. Colbert's opening salvo was deceptively simple. He focused on Meghan's latest venture, a lifestyle show offering culinary and domestic tips filmed within the opulent confines of her Montecito estate. But within seconds, he transformed the premise into a devastating metaphor for her entire post-royal identity. "There's something uniquely inspiring," he began, his tone dripping with mock reverence, "about a woman who lives in a home with a staff larger than the population of a small town, explaining to the rest of us how to find mindfulness through whisking our own salad dressing." The audience chuckled, but Colbert wasn't done. He played clips of Meghan speaking about the sacred simplicity of homemade meals, then juxtaposed them with paparazzi shots of her and Harry disembarking from private jets and headlines about their numerous domestic employees. "This isn't a cooking show," he declared. "It's a documentary on cognitive dissonance. It's a masterclass in how to sell authenticity without possessing a single authentic bone in your body." What made Colbert's critique so potent was its specificity. He didn't traffic in vague accusations of privilege. He weaponized Meghan's own words and actions against her. He dissected her language, pointing out the relentless self-mythologizing, the stories of hardship and resilience that somehow always circle back to her own exceptionalism. "The story is always the same," he noted. "I suffered, I overcame, and now I will tell you how to be more like me, for a price." He compared her to a late-night infomercial host, selling a dream of transformation that only she, by virtue of her unique suffering and brilliance, can provide. The audience, increasingly aware of the Sussexes' commercial missteps and abandoned projects, was primed for the message. Colbert was simply giving voice to a skepticism that has been building in the mainstream, cutting through the carefully managed PR narrative that has shielded Meghan from the kind of scrutiny she claims to despise. Perhaps the most brutal segment of the monologue arrived when Colbert addressed the Sussexes' relationship with the truth. He revisited Meghan's claims of oppression and isolation within the royal family, not to dispute their validity, but to highlight the jarring contrast with her current life of immense wealth, influence, and selective visibility. She fled one of the most powerful institutions in the world for an even more powerful institution, the American celebrity industrial complex, he observed, but this one lets her be the CEO. Colbert, a master of rhetorical framing, presented Meghan not as a victim, but as a supremely savvy operator who leveraged her royal status to build a commercial empire while continuing to invoke her victimhood as a shield against criticism. It's a brilliant strategy, he conceded, his voice turning sharp. You get to play revolutionary and aristocrat simultaneously. You condemn the system while cashing its checks. You demand privacy while starring in a reality show about your desire for privacy. The response in the room was electric. This wasn't the nervous laughter that sometimes greets uncomfortable jokes. This was the roar of an audience feeling seen, an audience whose vague unease about the Sussex narrative had finally been articulated with clarity and wit. Colbert had done what newspaper columns and Twitter threads had failed to do. He condensed a complex cultural frustration into a digestible, undeniable argument. By framing his critique within the familiar format of a late-night monologue, he gave it a veneer of accessibility that made it all the more damaging. This wasn't an angry rant from a conservative outlet. It was a clever, measured takedown from the heart of liberal media, delivered by one of its most trusted voices. The aftermath of Colbert's segment is likely to be far more significant than a few viral clips. It represents a tipping point. Meghan Markle has long been a polarizing figure, but her support within the cultural left, the demographic most likely to sympathize with her claims of institutional racism and sexism, has been a crucial part of her brand's foundation. Colbert's monologue signals a crack in that foundation. It suggests that the patience for what he framed as performative suffering and monetized grievance is wearing thin, even among those who are ideologically predisposed to be allies. When a comedian like Colbert, who has built his career on mocking conservative hypocrisy, turns his gaze on a liberal icon, it exposes a fatigue with hypocrisy in all its forms. He painted Meghan not as a flawed humanitarian, but as a breathtakingly cynical performance artist, and in doing so, he may have accomplished what years of tabloid headlines and royal leaks could not. He didn't just mock Meghan Markle, he rendered her brand irrelevant. The laughter that echoed through the theater wasn't just at her expense. It was the sound of a narrative finally collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions.
Because you would think someone in human resources might have stepped in to tell Henry VIII that chopping off your wife's head could be interpreted as a hostile work environment.
In what will undoubtedly be remembered as one of the most devastatingly effective public takedowns of a celebrity persona in recent television history, Stephen Colbert devoted a significant portion of his Monday night monologue to surgically dismantling Meghan Markle's latest and most baffling career pivot, a Netflix cooking and lifestyle venture that critics, and now America's most trusted late-night satirist, are labeling a cooking show with no actual cooking. The segment, which has since ripped across social media with incendiary force, did not merely poke fun at the Duchess of Sussex. It exposed the fundamental absurdity at the core of her post-royal brand, framing her new show as a perfect metaphor for a public life built on performance without substance, curation without authenticity, and ambition without tangible skill. For an audience increasingly weary of influencer culture and elite hypocrisy, Colbert's bit was not just comedy, it was catharsis. And for Meghan Markle, it was a catastrophic breach of the carefully controlled media bubble she has fought so hard to maintain. Colbert, a master of the slow burn setup and the lethal punchline, opened with an expression of mock awe. "You have to admire the bravery," he began, his face a mask of faux sincerity. "In a world on fire, a woman who lives in a $14 million mansion with a staff that likely includes someone whose only job is to polish the organic avocados has decided to checks notes. Teach us how to make toast." The audience, already primed for a skewering, erupted as Colbert launched into a clinical dissection of the show's trailer, pausing on shots of Meghan gazing thoughtfully at a bowl of lemons or arranging a sprig of rosemary with the intense focus of a neurosurgeon. "This isn't a cooking show," he declared, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "This is ASMR for the deeply out of touch. It's a visual meditation on what happens when you have unlimited money and no real purpose." The brilliance of Colbert's attack lay in its specificity. He didn't just call the show boring or pretentious, he framed it as an act of profound cultural insult. He zeroed in on the stark dissonance between the show's stated ethos of mindful living and the Sussex's well-documented lifestyle of private jets, luxury cars, and sprawling, energy-intensive properties. Her idea of farm to table is probably having a servant carry the table to the farm, he quipped, a line that instantly crystallized the public's growing frustration with elite environmental posturing. Colbert played a clip of Meghan discussing the healing power of arranging flowers, and then cut to a headline about the couple's use of a private helicopter for a short trip. Nothing heals the soul like burning a year's worth of a teacher's salary in jet fuel to give a speech about mindfulness, he deadpanned. The audience's laughter was laced with a sharp edge of recognition. This was comedy that resonated because it was rooted in a truth the public has already sensed. But Colbert, a keen student of power dynamics, saved his most damaging critique for the show's fundamental lack of utility, dubbing it the first cooking show where the only thing getting cooked is the audience. He contrasted it with the work of genuine culinary icons. Julia Child taught people how to debone a duck. Martha Stewart taught us how to fold a fitted sheet. Meghan Markle is teaching us how to squints at teleprompter. Curate a vibe? He then delivered the killing blow. This isn't educational content, it's a screensaver. It's the visual equivalent of a white noise machine. Expensive, aesthetically pleasing, and utterly devoid of nutritional or intellectual value.
Where the people are, I want to see... Sorry. Go on.
But it came on, I was like, well, I'm just here all the time, so may as well watch this. And I went, oh my God.
The reported reaction from behind the gated gardens of Montecito was not one of mild irritation or dismissive eye rolls, but of white-hot rage and utter disbelief, a volcanic emotional response that reveals far more about Meghan Markle's precarious position in the cultural firmament than any press release ever could. For a woman who has meticulously engineered her post-royal rebirth on the twin pillars of narrative control and sympathetic media curation, Stephen Colbert's segment on The Late Show was not merely a bad review, it was a full system failure, a nightmare scenario that breached the very defenses she has spent years and millions of dollars constructing. This was not an attack from a predictable foe like the British tabloids, entities she has successfully framed as racist and villainous antagonists in her story. This was a brutal, joke-filled indictment delivered from the heart of the American liberal media establishment, the very ecosystem she believed was her sanctuary and her strategic home turf. The terror in that Montecito reaction is the terror of lost control, the dawning realization that the carefully constructed persona of the relatable Duchess, the humanitarian entrepreneur, the victim warrior, is beginning to crack under the weight of its own contradictions, and that the most dangerous weapon, respectable, mainstream mockery, is now being aimed directly at its foundation. What makes Colbert's critique so uniquely damaging and impossible to dismiss is its methodological precision. His jokes were not ad hominem attacks, they were forensic examinations rooted in observable fact and a keen, unassailable analysis of class and privilege. By focusing on the absurd dissonance of a multi-millionaire heiress to a royal title producing a lifestyle show from a palatial estate, he successfully reframed Meghan. He moved her in the space of a 7-minute monologue from a protected category, a woman of color, and a self-proclaimed victim of systemic press bias, into a far more vulnerable one, a purveyor of modern fraud. The fraud in question is the sale of authenticity itself, a commodity she has trafficked in since her departure from the UK. Colbert exposed the transaction. The audience is asked to buy her jams, her recipes, her advice on mindfulness and connection. But the product is built on a foundation of inauthenticity, on a life of such rarefied privilege that it cannot possibly relate to the struggles it claims to soothe. This is a charge that resonates deeply in a culture increasingly cynical about influencer ethics and elite hypocrisy, and it is a charge that cannot be deflected by accusations of racism or misogyny. Colbert didn't attack her gender or her race. He attacked her class performance and her perceived hypocrisy, making his critique far more penetrating and socially permissible to agree with. The long-term implications of this are nothing short of existential for the Sussex brand. Colbert's monologue did something crucial. It gave a mainstream, respectable, and most importantly, funny voice to the skepticism that has long simmered in digital corners and conservative media. By packaging this critique as comedy on CBS, he effectively granted a mass audience permission to question the Sussex narrative without the social risk of being automatically labeled a bigot or a hater. He bypassed the entire culture war defense system that has insulated the couple from serious critique. Humor, in this case, became the ultimate vehicle for truth, disarming defenses and making the criticism infinitely more shareable and digestible than any polemical op-ed could ever be. He wasn't just mocking a poorly conceived television show, he was exposing the entire fragile architecture of Meghan Markle's commercial identity, an empire constructed on on the shifting sands of perceived virtue and curated victimhood. When the core product is your personal brand, and that brand is predicated on your likability and relatability, the sound of America's laughter, orchestrated by one of its most trusted comedic voices, isn't just a PR setback. It is a direct threat to the bottom line. It is the market revoking its consent to be sold to. Stephen Colbert didn't just deliver a set of jokes. He may have executed a public liquidation of a commercial identity, proving that in the end, even the most carefully curated crown can be melted down by the heat of satire. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please do not forget to leave your thought in the comment section. Thanks for watching.